right? So how do we do this, and how do we go forward together? I think that's been the point of the talks here throughout the week. And I want to talk a little bit about cartography and how things have changed over time, because again, I know all of you are very familiar with statistics and what's happened in your industry. But the cartographic industry has changed dramatically over time, and I think these two disciplines are converging together. So cartography really is the study of making a map, right? It's a little bit of art, it's a little bit of science, but really it helps us communicate. It helps us understand the problem, to display a certain kind of data. And cartography has dramatically changed over time, right? These are early maps from the 1600s, filled with lots of errors as we look at them today. However, at that point in time, they helped solve a problem. They gave insight to what the world looked like. And we see changes continue over time in this discipline. So from the start on parchment paper to the advent of the compass to things like the discovery of latitude and longitude, allowing us to sail and know what time it is and where we were. All of these things impacted this technology. The advent of magnetic storage, of course, changed everything. And of course, becoming digital and newer things like remote sensing and aerial imagery have impacted this discipline. Along the way, we really became more focused on the user and usability. Cartography became more productized, as you can see here, and these are some early examples of atlases that were produced, right? These are the Michelin guides in Europe back in the 1800s. And even into the 1900s, we got more user-friendly, right? We had to produce data that the users would understand in an easy-to-use format. And that continues today as we become digital, right? People need to be able to understand information and interpret that, and a map is a great way to do that. Now, spatial information today is really created using software, not the old way, the way that I used to do it, which was manually when I started. But it allows us to measure things, it allows us to interpret things, it allows us to discover patterns. And I think those are all things that you're trying to do with your data every day. Now, a couple of other things that are really critical today. Imagery is becoming ubiquitous, and it's really almost instantaneous. If a disaster occurs, you can get that imagery within hours of that event occurring. And the level of detail has dramatically changed, right? We saw from the presentations here today, data at the block level, data at the parcel level, right? So address geocoding becoming more and more critical, gridded data becoming more and more prevalent. And I would say you've seen these same changes as well, right? From the early census days into the 1700s, everything was very manual, collecting information on paper. That even continued into the 1900s, right? It wasn't really until we got into the middle of the last century where you started to see technology impact how you were conducting your business, right? From the days of the early card punch readers into the first census machines that we saw introduced in the 1960s. And the technology moved forward. Here in the 1980s, I actually used that computer. I'm older than some. But using computer technology, right, to create forms in WordPerfect or to do analysis using Lotus 123, we were groundbreaking, right? We were using these new technologies to understand the problems. And really at this point in time is when I started to get familiar with information graphics and how you present data to have people understand your message. And that technology change has continued, right? As we march through time, devices get smaller, they get less expensive, memory gets more inexpensive, and technology today is even getting down to the wearable device, right? So what's in the future? That's one of the other things we have to consider. As we all struggle with this problem of geospatial and statistical converging, what are the technology impacts in the future? And what's that going to do to our work, right? And we've talked about things here today like open data, big data. Those are things that are really going to impact what we're doing. Those public-private partnerships that were touched on before are going to be critically important, I think. Why is this important? Why is this, again, important to me? In the work that I do now, I work with a lot of companies trying to help them understand how they can use statistical data to understand their business or to understand their problem. So in the public sector, it could be anything from, I need to provide utilities, where are those people, right? That information is coming from you. Where are the populations, where is the need? And from a geospatial perspective then, how do I deliver that service? And that can be, again, from emergency management to public safety and security, national security, even things like transportation planning. On the private side, it gets even more complicated in some ways because these private companies have a lot of their own big data. So from a real estate perspective, a real estate developer working with an economic development agency wanting to understand what to build and where, right? They will bring a lot of their data into the equation, as will a retail company with all that very big point of sale data. They know everything about their customers, right? So bringing that big data together with your statistical data is important for them to understand their business. Or even in the insurance sector, where is the risk? Where am I at danger here of flood? And how do I go about writing my policies to insure those people? What does it look like? Who's most at risk? What are the populations there? Do I have a lot of seniors? So combining their data with statistical data and being able to visualize that is critically important. So these are the reasons that I get excited about what all of you are trying to do. I also know there's some challenges that you face. I've heard throughout the week different things. Interoperability is going to be key. Data accuracy, security, right? We all are very aware of those issues. And they're not easy ones to solve, right? Because again, of technology, we have all of these platforms. We have all of these different clients, right? People have Android and Apple and tablets and all these different flavors. And how do we make sure that our data can be used in all of those formats? And then how do we make it easily accessible so that a developer could use it, or a company can use it, or an agency can use it? I want to suggest the other thing that's important is change over time. People change, the way we work change, where we work has changed, right? There is going to be constant change as we go forward, and we have to think about the impacts, not only from a technology standpoint, but from a human standpoint. There's a lot of things we talked about here. We talked about big data heavily, consumerization of technology. I heard that touched on a little bit. It used to be that businesses drove the adoption of technology. Now we do, right? Because of the demand, because of what we're asking for, the usability we want, we are really driving the IT landscape, and that's going to continue. We talked about human capital management. Maybe not in those words, but I heard a lot of talk on staffing this week and the challenges of recruiting, finding, keeping good people, right? And how does that affect what you're doing going forward? And then in disaster management, of course, the data that you produce, the information is so critical to being able to respond to those sort of events and also help us plan and be prepared for those sort of events. So these are all things that are going to be important as we go forward as well. So to me, what's exciting is we're looking at bringing geography, a map, a very simple map, together with the thematic data, the statistical data that you're putting together, but turning that into usable information, an information product, an answer, right? Not just data, but a real answer to a question that a person is asking to improve their business or improve their agency. So I challenge you all to think about that and to think about how geospatial and statistical coming together can improve what you're doing in your agency. There are so many areas where this impacts, again, from planning to workforce management, to healthcare, education, poverty. All of these places are impacted by what it is that you're doing, and we're really excited to be a part of this and hope that we can help you solve some of the problems along the way. So thank you very much.